Welcome, travelers. I'm Josh.
And I'm Lee Wanika, and this is Tabletop Journeys, where we will be your not so humble guides on the quest for RPG adventures.
All right, welcome everybody back to Tabletop Journeys. Excited to be bringing to you what is the final chapter in the Dungeon Master's Guide. It has been a long road talking about all the fancy stuff there. Yeah, I know with you two with your fancy covers, I see how it is. But as always, I'm Josh Newton, Mr. Michael Ross from the RPG Academy, Mr. Lee Winika Miller. Gentlemen, how the hell are you? We haven't recorded in a while here because I up and went on vacation for a couple of weeks here, so I hope
I,
you guys
I
are doing
feel
well.
like we have been on a long journey together, and I'm just glad that we have a place that we can come together and rest
Yep.
before our next big adventure.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a long road, and I mean, after the amount of time that we've been gone, we've taken at least two Bastion actions
Yes,
since we've been gone here. Yeah, good times.
There are so many songs, but nobody wants to, and I mean absolutely nobody in the world wants me to be singing Kelly Clarkson right now. So I will
Uh,
endeavor not to.
I mean,
But
I'm surprised you didn't pick up the Enterprise football that I dropped at your feet there.
yeah.
you did, but I went. But then you threw on the Kelly Clarkson, and I like. I'm still fighting the urge. Now, it has been a great couple of weeks that you have gotten vacation.
Very nice.
Like we're gloating about book covers. You got a vacation. Okay, that's
Yeah,
all I'm going to say
I
about
True,
I'm
pretty
I'm
much.
gloating because I didn't have to do any editing or episodes pushing for 2 weeks, so
Exactly,
that's
exactly.
pretty great.
But I am very excited about this chapter for a host of reasons. It is something I have always liked in gaming since first edition or the general concept, and it is something that I have been waiting for since we saw it in the UA a while back. It is something that we are in the process of doing in one of the games I play in, a live stream, and I've got lots of thoughts, questions. I've detailed and gone over this. I'm really anxious to talk about it. But as importantly, I really am anxious to hear your thoughts because it may not be as complete as I like. And I'm
Mm.
not sure what I need to do to get it to that point. It is all the things I want to be able to use. I think I need some assistance from Dr. Homebrew and our dear educator for RPGs to get me across the finish line on this.
I
I
have
think
only
that's me, Michael.
questions,
Yeah, yeah.
no answers.
And I have only answers, no questions. So hopefully they match.
We'll see.
Yeah. So let me dive in just on one point that you said there because I think that you are exactly right. We did an episode on the UA when it came out, and that UA was pretty good. There was a lot of stuff in there that was very very interesting to me. Because I know bastions were kind of like a thing that appeared in earlier editions, but we had not seen them in a really, really long time. And there was a lot of stuff in that UA that was very, very interesting to me that I was really hoping. I wanted to go ahead and kind of see what the final version was going to be like. I think that there was unfortunately a lot kind of left on the cutting room floor when they went from UA into this version. There are definitely some things that I think uh, are pretty drastically changed from their original version. Some of the I think in the process of smoothing out some of the sharp edges, they went a little bit too far, and they've kind of actually eaten into the grain of the wood a little bit here. But to kind of answer your question about how I'm using it, so I also am going to be using the Bastion system actually in my tabletop game, in my home campaign also. But here's the thing: my players are only level 2, so they're going to get a Bastion at level 5, but they don't know it yet. The Bastion that they're going to get for an in game reason is in the process of being developed, and they're starting to see signs that it's getting developed now at level 2, so that by the time they get to level 5, it won't just be, hey, you're level 5 and now you get a bastion. It'll be like, now you're level 5 and now you realize like there's some dude at the front door that never leaves and he keeps asking if he can go ahead and do things for you, that sort of thing. So I'm really working to go ahead and weave the concept of their bastion into the story. And I am also making it so that while the Bastion will have multiple functions and the players will have control over that, it is a single thing. Each player is not getting their own. It's a single thing that they will be able to go ahead and kind of modify to their own suit and go. So that's kind of the way that I'm doing it. How about you, Michael? What do you got? How are you using it or not?
So I played these games since I was a little kid. Both of you, I think, are the same. Leonika actually met me a little older than me, but I'm pretty sure I'm older than Josh. So I remember back in like basic D&D, first edition of advanced, where at certain levels you got things like this. Like it just, if you were a fighter, you became like, you got a title like warlord at like level 5 and you attracted followers. So this is something I have played with well in my past, and I've always liked the idea. I think it's a very cool concept, and I think a lot of players like the idea of eventually running a business, tavern, casino type of a thing. But I don't actually like the rules they have presented. I love the concept of them. I think this is the most generic, cookie cutter, paint by numbers version of this.
Yeah.
Probably will not use any of the actual rules, but I love it's a concept. And I just want to say again, I try to be very positive, but I'm a little salty today, so I'm just going to let it shine. I completely believe that the only reason this chapter exists is because there was a $2.2 million Kickstarter by Matt Colville a few years ago for strongholds and followers. They're just like, we can't leave that money on the table. Clearly, this is something
Yeah.
people want, but I'm not sure that they did it any better than he did.
Yeah. I do agree that I think that they are a little wishy-washy was the comment that I wrote kind of on my little yellow tag here that I'm going to rip off because now I've made that comment.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I I agree with you. I think that the rules went very basic, and as of the time we're recording, it has been less than 48 hours since my one of my online groups where I'm a player in a live stream game, Old Ways to Spiro. We did not record. There's a few folks who were sick, so we did not record this weekend. But what we did do is talk about how we're going to be implementing the Bastion system, and there was rampant confusion. And
Hmm.
so a lot of that meeting between a fantastic GM who knows narratively what he wants to do, understands the rules very well, but several players, and this is not a dig on my friends and fellow players. I think to Michael's point, this was done in such a cookie cutter, very basic way, fairly easy to understand in some ways, but almost so basic that it has too many ways it could be done. And that created confusion. I didn't know that in any of my previous conversations about it until I sat with 5 or 6 very intelligent, very seasoned, very experienced gamers, and everybody had a different idea of what the actual words on the page meant.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So
That is a strength of some games, but it is a strong weakness for a section that I was very excited about. And I am actually kind of revising the glow I had for this based on what I actually
yeah.
saw at the table.
So and there's like a couple sentences at the beginning along the lines of what Josh said, which I do think is the absolute correct way to do this. Is you need to sprinkle that in early. Maybe it's the tavern they attend and eventually they become owners, or there's like an old mansion on the hill that they have to clean out like zombies, and they're like, hey, you cleaned it out. Do you want it? Like it should be part of the story, in my opinion. But the part that broke my brain is there's literally a thing like your place can have closets. There's an actual paragraph that explains that if you want a closet in your bastion, you're welcome to have them. And why do we really need the fact that closets are okay and you can have them? Like, is that what we need? You can
Yeah.
have closet. You also can have corridors, ramps, because you can't get between buildings or rooms if there's no corridor. Yes, we know how rooms work. Like
we all
that's
we all live in
silly.
houses.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's windows. You can have windows and doors. There's literally
Yeah.
sections. And again, I guess they're trying to like lowest common denominator, someone who's never ran a game before. But I just feel like that level of minutia is
Yeah.
unnecessary. Like, give me something else rather than a whole paragraph on doors and windows are acceptable to have in
Es
your bastion.
especially in the face of the fact that there's so much inconsistency in some of the implementation, right? Like, the fact that there's, like, I wrote a note here about how, like, there's 7 days per Bastion turn, right?
Mhm.
Every 7 days, you get to go ahead and do a thing, but all of the things take 10 days to build. So, you take a Bastion turn on day 1, You take another Bastion turn on day 8. The things that you built on day 1 aren't ready yet, and you can't build more things until they're done. So what do you do on day 8? And it just
Rest.
doesn't
Yeah.
work. Well, I mean, sure, but you don't have anything to rest in because they haven't
Yeah,
finished building
Right,
it.
yeah.
So it's like,
yeah.
so it's like the implementation, it feels like no one sat down and actually looked at the math and said, maybe if we're going to make this all 10-day based, maybe we should make them all decimal style
Yeah.
numbers so that,
Yeah.
maybe Bastion turns happen every 10 days and they take 5 days to build, or 5 days for a turn and 10 days to build, or something like that. But like make it match.
So the fact that they went with calendar weeks and base 10 for the building of things is a conundrum to me.
Yeah.
And I really, really wish they had gone one way or the other. I actually always thought, even though it's weird, that Forgotten Realms said our weeks are 10 days and they
They
referred
are.
to them as a 10-day.
They call them 10 days.
And
Yeah.
and this was a perfect opportunity to support that mechanism.
Yep.
And just keep that going for the sake of
Yeah.
simplicity. I am betting that they didn't do that because they are specifically trying to divorce the core game from the Forgotten Realms setting.
Right.
And so they didn't do the base 10. And at some point, they might have changed that and then not really paid attention because the decision was we can't have it be too close to Forgotten Realms.
Yep.
And the fact that that's weird and creates math problems was never going to be a consideration. One thing you said, and I know we're going to move on here, but I wanted to mention is Josh, your point about sprinkling in the beginning. I'm not going to duplicate what Michael said. Point spot on, both of you. That was a major part of the issue with our campaign. We are already at 8th level. We are actually about within 2 or 3 sessions of being 9th level. So we'll be at the second iteration of Bastions.
Yep.
So at this point, when we go, we're supposed to get 2, and very close to immediately after, we're going to get a 3rd. The challenge is not, while many of us have done things in game that could say, okay, I've done enough to get to a Bastion, and so it makes sense. Not everybody did because not everybody knew it was coming. And so they didn't do that. So now there's a lot of narrative dissonance, and that was really core to the problem. So anybody who's going to be starting a new campaign can do exactly what you're talking about. And I think this will be a better system for a new campaign rather than adding it to an existing campaign, unless you're adding it at the close of your campaign and saying, hey, before we do our next campaign in the same game world, your retiring characters can do this, and we're going to pick up 30 years later or X number of years later, and we can, in the 4 months between now and then, do some Bastion turns to see how you've changed the campaign world. That's what I'm doing with my Land of 18 Seas campaign. So that narrative dissonance doesn't exist. I can just say, hey, everybody's got what they've got. This is this point. Now we're going to do these Bastion turns. It's X number of years later. Now we'll do these Bastion turns, and you're building the world that we're going to do the next campaign in. So there are 2 elements where this, I think, will work much better, regardless of other weirdnesses. But I think they will work better in those 2 situations to start with, or at the conclusion of.
Yep.
In the middle of, I would not recommend anybody use this in the middle of a campaign.
I'll let you know how it works in about 3 levels or so when they actually realize that what they've got. You know what I mean? Because I mean that's kind of I think that it'll work too, but we'll see. Yeah.
So again, and people who don't already know me will get to know me through these episodes and the type of GM that I am.
Yes,
But I kind of feel like this is also like encumbrance. I understand that there are some folks who really enjoy that, and like, the mastery of, I know exactly how to calculate what I can carry becomes important, and my system mastery gives me an advantage, and like that's fun. I'm not saying it's not fun. It's not fun for me. And I feel like this Bastion system is like encumbrance. I'm not going to use it because for me, it only needs to be important when it's important.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to do a Bastion turn every 7 days. I don't think you need to worry about it. But then eventually I'll be like, hey, this thing has happened at your Bastion, and it's going to become like the next 3 sessions. We're going to do a thing there. There's going to be a person or an event. But like the tables are great for like inspiration to give you ideas of what you could do. But I'm going to build that into the world. It's going to become, it's like an episode of a TV show. Like, how often do you go to like a character's house
Yeah.
Usually only when it matters. It's about to get broken into, or there's a relationship and there's somebody moving out. And so you see their bedroom is now sparse because their loved one has taken all their things. That's what I'm going to do. Bastion's going to become
Yeah.
important when I want it to be, or when the players do. Don't get me wrong. Like they're like, we want this to be cool. I'll do that. But it's not something where I want to spreadsheet this out and go, hey, have we done our thing this week? That's not fun for me.
Yeah.
I think it works great as and another concept for me, especially with my Land of 18 Seas campaign, which closed. I'm not going to be running another campaign there for probably a good year or so. But I love the group. They're good friends. I do play with many of them in other games here or there, but I also don't want to lose the world and lose people's connection with the world.
Mhm.
So I think doing Bastion terms as a game within a game, as a play by post game, has some really good value. That's what I'm doing with my campaign world because I'm not going to be running a campaign. I'm simply going to be once in a while, hey everybody, let's throw out a Bastion turns, once a month or whatever, and it'll be play by post, on Discord or on whatever.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of where I think it again. It has some value, and I like the base here, but I don't know if it is certainly not a one size fits all,
Yeah.
and I think that it has potential to cause confusion and frustration to the point where it could get just dropped altogether. And the really good parts of it, the narrative story, like you get to make your own supporting character. I'm sorry, you get to make your own NPC. Um,
Mhm.
I'm blending another game which lets you build supporting characters, which
Right.
help you build the world.
Yeah.
And I really think that had there been more emphasis on that element of it, it would have been better narratively and better for the game.
Because there's a real and this is the only thing that has kind of been giving me pause that I've been trying to go ahead and wrap my head around is because my game runs milestone, right? So I am intrigued at how the interaction of the bastion system and a milestone leveling system are going to work, because there's the bastion system requires certain levels to get certain things, and it requires a certain amount of time to elapse between when those things happen. So, am I going to be cheating my players out of things that their bastion gets if they level too quickly, right? If they level from level 5 to 9 before they can go ahead and build the things that they want for their level 5 stuff, and so therefore their level 9 stuff doesn't get there till level 10 or 11 or whatever.
Right.
Like how is that interaction going to work out? And I haven't that's the part I haven't quite wrapped my head around yet, and I think honestly it's going to have to wait and to go ahead and see how it plays out at the
Yeah,
table.
you're gonna have to do it. Like, I don't know that you can plot this. You're just gonna have to experience it.
Yeah.
And I think that would be my final word so I don't come across as too negative. I'm so glad this exists in the book because a ton of people who are new to the game are going to just like spontaneously think, wouldn't it be cool if we had our own place? Even on like the first session, someone's never played before, they're going to be in a tavern and they're may like, maybe we can own
Yeah.
this tavern. And they'll probably end up like,
Yeah.
trying to murder everyone to take it. But that's, those are growing
Yeah.
pains. But the idea that you can have your own base is a almost a universal concept that's going to come up at some point in time to a
Yeah.
group. So I'm glad that they provided rules for that. And if you
Yeah.
were a newer DM and you're not sure, follow these to the letter until you can't or don't want to, and then just make it up. But
Okay.
start there. It's a great starting spot that
Yeah.
it can exist. These are the sorts of things it can do. This is like how often you should check on them. But the moment that becomes like, hey, this isn't fun, jettison it and start doing your own thing. But
Yeah.
start here if you don't know what else to do, because it should be something in people's games because they're looking for it and it can provide a ton of fun and cool things to happen.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it's a list of buildings when you build your very first campaign town that you should have in your
Yes.
campaign town.
Yeah.
If nothing else, and it lets you know who to make an NPC or the types of things that could happen in that location.
Yeah.
So this is a great building block for GMs as a campaign thing,
Yeah.
regardless of whether or not your players engage with these rules.
Yeah.
It is a great start there. As far as the time thing goes, Josh, for me, I think the issue is level advancement and time are not connected no matter what.
Right.
So depending on how you narratively describe your campaign and the time between will answer your question. So,
Well,
for
right.
example, whatever campaign you're running, if the campaign had a clock
Yeah.
and that campaign clock was going to be done in a year, the Bastion system is not going to be great for your campaign
Exactly.
because there's not enough time to do it.
Yeah.
I was running a world kingdom spanning war campaign that was going to take years. Like in the course of my game, I had characters that went from age 14 to age 25 ish,
Sure.
right? Bastion system works better in a game like that because
Yep.
when they get there, there are plenty of time
Yeah.
between levels.
They're not
And
spending all their
doesn't
time building stuff. They actually
Right.
get to go ahead and enjoy some of the
exactly
stuff that they built. Yep. Totally.
like between some of my levels, it could have been 4 years, but it was still only 3 sessions
Yep.
Yeah.
or what have you. So it's all about narratively how your passing time
Yep.
in your game has nothing to do with the actual levels and the advancement of the
Right.
players go. And if you vary that, so early levels they go really quick, middle levels they take a little bit longer, it can also be useful.
Yeah.
It really depends on how you choose to describe that.
One of my favorite tips for making a bad guy like truly hated by your players is just to have that bad guy minorly inconvenience them. Like you'd
Oh,
be
sure.
surprised how quickly that will cause players to hate someone.
Oh, yeah.
The Bastion is a perfect thing. Your tax rate has gone up. Oh, actually, we need to annex this because the palace is being expanded. So we're going to tear that down. We'll
Oh,
compensate you. Oh, there's a parade coming. We have to shut you down during the bit. Like you could find so many ways for just some like minor
Oh,
bureaucrat to piss your players off and make them hated and actually do no real harm. You
oh,
know what I'm
that's
saying?
amazing,
Yeah.
Michael. That's
you know what you just put in my head, Michael?
Oh
oh.
no, don't blame me for
You
this.
Oh yes, I'm blaming you for
Yeah.
this. There are two cousins who live with their uncle, and they brew and distill spirits and deliver them in their orange-colored wagon.
Oh
Meanwhile,
no.
the local jarl and his constable are constantly trying to overtax them and bust them for not paying proper taxes on these spirits that they distill.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, they are former nobles who happen to have the last name Duke.
Yep. Yep. So you get the whole Duke Syracuse thing. Like
Yeah.
that's yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
yep.
Yep. Oh yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the tavern, by the way, that their other cousin who wears very very short breeches, uh, she happens to be a bartender at the Boar's Head.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah. You went deep down that road there, Leonika. That was
I am always somehow or another going
I
to
think
connect something to the Dukes of Hazzard
I mean I yeah. Yeah.
at some point.
Uh, anyway, I'll have to go ahead and say, oh, see, see, I went college basketball. I did not
No,
go.
no,
Yeah, yeah,
I
So
went
I was the
Dukes
one
of
that went
Hazzard.
deep down.
yep. They're cousins.
Yep.
Yep, yep.
They're
Yep.
cousins.
Yep. Yep.
They sell distilled
That's
beverages,
right.
Hey,
orange colored wagon.
you were talking about upstate New York. I didn't think cousins was that big a deal. Um, I and I will say this too about your point about kind of like building a city using the Bastion system in general as kind of like guidance for the storyteller. That is really an interesting idea that I hadn't thought about. I do think that you have to be kind of picky about which of the buildings you pick, and if you're going to make like kind of like here's the framework for this town, it's a bastion, it has these things, because some of the buildings are certainly stronger than others, right? At the
Mhm.
end of the
Oh yeah.
day, and some of them sound way better. Like, you know, the two notes that I had kind of like right at the very beginning here was that level 5 barrack for a certain kind of game, the level 5 barrack is super duper powerful because it gives you basically command of this entire squad of troops that can go ahead and come up. And if you compare that to the level 13 archive, right? Level 13 archive, the big shiny that the level 13 archive gives you is a minion who can spend 7 days researching something and give you basically the effect of a legend lore spell, which is a 5th level spell, which you've got at level 13 anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So it's like it doesn't really like I think you'd want to be kind of picky about which ones you do, or kind of like, I think that like so many other things in the book, whenever they say something specific like that, you as a storyteller need to know when do you hand wave the specificity so that it makes more sense at your game table,
Right.
right? Because like if you've got a minion that can take 7 days away and go ahead and basically get the effect of a 5th level spell that you can already cast, maybe that doesn't take 7 days. Maybe you sent him out a week ago, or maybe he can only get specific information. Maybe you need him to go ahead and research something very specific, or that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Find a way to kind of make it make sense, or he has to go to a distant kingdom or something like that. Like it's something about the timeline, but it needs a little bit of massaging, I think, to go ahead and actually make sense. That's kind of like the biggest rule I think I can give you in this chapter is that there's a lot of great guidelines in here, but everything in here should be kind of treated with a little bit of salt.
Yeah.
So
And if you really want
Yeah.
to give your players some fun toys, ignore the level requirements and give them like a really high level thing early.
oh,
Like the
totally,
very
yeah.
first thing they get, they have a teleportation circle and then the like little Fey realm storage
Oh,
closet.
yeah.
That is super cool to have at 5th level.
Dude, I'm telling you. Okay, so you say that, but you have to understand. At my tabletop game, I have both an Eladrin and an Archfey Warlock. They're gonna have the Feywild portal when they get there at level 5 because their joint patron is not going to not let them have it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about.
And
It's
it's
like they're
just
gonna just
super
realize.
cool. Right.
Yeah,
And then you can use that as a story element. Like it's a Fey portal, like it's like a quantum space.
yeah,
But does it have another entrance? Like maybe someone else comes in the other side and something goes missing or
yeah,
someone comes through and then
yeah,
those are like I mean there's so many cool stories that you
yeah.
can do. Don't
All of
wait
a
till
sudden, the
level
satyr winds up in your
17
lounge, yeah.
for the
Like,
cool
that's
stuff.
yeah. I totally
Yeah.
agree, exactly, I think that there's a lot of really interesting things there, so
Yeah. Mechanically, one of the things that came up in our discussions the other day and that I noted very early on is the rules are weird, and I get them now, but I didn't get them. Somebody else actually had to read it back and explain it to me, which is in a bastion, you can have some facilities can be duplicated, but not all facilities. And I was looking for which facilities can be duplicated, and Watsy chose to write it the opposite. If it doesn't say it can be duplicated, then it cannot. I think that's a bass backwards way. They should just have a spot that says duplication, yes or no.
Yeah.
Make it easy to read
yep,
because I had to sit and make a chart for the group by going through every single possible location to get that fixed. I
yeah,
thought that was a weird
Yeah.
choice. And I think that is one of those little nuanced things. Doesn't change what this can be used for in any way other than makes it more complicated to do because some player somewhere is going to be doing their very best to have fun, not realize that a given bastion can't be duplicated. They're going to come to the table, and then some other player is going to know that rule and tell them you can't do that. And now 2 weeks of planning between games and all the things that they wanted to do are shot because by rule it can't be done. And that's a problem for me as a player, saying that just makes it harder for people.
yeah,
Mhm.
Whereas they could have simply, like I said, duplication, yes or no, and you're fine.
Yeah.
yep,
And the other thing I would say to all GMs and all players, especially if you're going to have multiple players have individual bastions in different places in the town, or a GM makes what I think could be a cool decision, not necessarily easy, but a cool decision is if the town is a bastion and the special facilities represent buildings within the town.
Yeah.
I happen to like that concept a lot, but it is fraught with some peril. If you choose to do that, and even if you don't, it is important to understand not every tavern in your town is a bastion. So even
Mm.
if a tavern can't be duplicated, all that means is the special tavern, the tavern that gets mechanical benefits, can't be duplicated. So you could have three priests in your party. They each want to have their own sanctuary. Awesome. If everybody has their own separate, that's easy to do. They each have their own. If everybody's kind of in one, by rule, you can only have one. That doesn't mean the other priest can't have a sanctuary. That just becomes a non special room. It becomes one of those standard rooms that Michael was talking
Yeah.
about earlier.
It might have a
And
closet,
yeah,
maybe
it's
even
a
a
closet,
door.
yeah.
yeah,
If you want one, you can have those.
Maybe even a
Maybe even a
hallway to get to it.
hallway that
Yeah,
connects it
yeah.
to something
So
else.
I
Yeah.
will say the reason why that is
It's in the
there is because
book.
there is the mapping section, and they tell you that it's a good idea to map this in case you want to adventure there and all that. I
Yeah.
get why it's there. I don't like the way it was written. I think it was
Yeah.
basic. The better way to say is your building can be anything this size, any way you want to describe it, but this is the only special. These are the only special rooms in it. Done. And you can't have military quality walls unless you pay the cost for military quality walls. Save them a hell of a lot of page count or word count.
Right.
And I think that zhuzhed up a bit would have been a much better way to phrase all of that mess and not make it sound like what are we doing here?
yeah, yeah,
Because the only reason you need a detailed map, one, some people will find it's fun. Some people will be like, I want to map my bastion. Cool. But for like, I'm gonna say like 70% of people, it's not going to matter unless it's ever attacked.
Yeah.
But the rules don't get that granular where you're going to have a reverse dungeon crawl where you're actually like defending your fortress from inside, though that would be really fun.
That'd be really
So
fun,
I
yeah.
don't think you need that level of mapping. You can just be like your Bastion. It's cool.
Yeah.
Like I don't think we need the map for like most people doing
Yeah.
their Bastion.
I
Anyway,
think you could use a map for exactly what you're talking about, but the idea is that's not part of a Bastion turn. That is now the adventure.
yeah,
You've been out adventuring, you've been doing your Bastion turns, something you did in your campaign, or some previous Bastion turn event created an enemy, a villain that got that Burgermeister who was overtaxing you decides they're going to annex your building. That's not going to happen off camera. That's not going to happen on a Bastion turn. Now,
Mhm.
maybe that may happen a couple bastion turns so you're a bit weakened or what have you, and then there might be some additional roles to say, have they left spies in the building, have they
mhm,
built secret tunnels so they can get in and sap your building in a way that you might not know, or something like that. And then, like, okay, next 3 sessions they're taking on your bastion. You and your party need to defend it,
Yeah.
and then you would need that map for that purpose. But I don't think you're right, it is not something that is necessary all the time. And I think a lot more space was provided to it than needed
Yeah.
to be.
yeah,
I, I will say that we're kind of moved from like the facilities onto like the events and the turns and stuff like that now. I will say the big thing that kind of disappointed me about this chapter was I thought that the Bastion events section was it was a lot of bluster but had very little teeth. I mean, even just like, if you look at the Bastion events roll table, there's a 50% chance of literally nothing happening.
yeah.
Um, we're playing a role playing game that's based in a fantasy world. That's not fun.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
come
yeah.
on.
I will take a cue from at one of our very first publications, Collaborative World Building, and I'll
Yep.
take a cue from previous Splat Books 3.5 in this area. Um, add to the table. Everything that says nothing happens in those 50% of rolls that nothing
Yeah.
happens, look, add to them.
Well, hey, I
Find
mean,
some things. And I would say if there's a really, really bad thing, there needs to be a really, really good thing. If there's a moderately bad thing, there needs to be a moderately good thing, and kind of meet in the middle. Like if we're taking the D20 example or even the D12, one is going to be really, really good or really, really bad, and 12 is going to be really, really good or really, really bad in reverse. And then have everything kind of gradiate in the opposite direction towards the middle
mm,
and have some things. There's probably a merit in having one or two thing rolls, or maybe depending on the die you're using. If you're doing a D20, you could have 8 through 12 be or 9, 10, and 11 be nothing. That would be fine for me. But have everything have something that's either a cool bit of lore, a cool bit of knowledge,
yeah,
and you don't have to be specific about what it is. The role can be you learn a cool bit of knowledge based on your bastion, you know, and all the way up to, hey,
yeah,
you get twice the income
yeah.
this bastion turn,
Well,
or
I mean, so
hey,
that's a
you
different event.
lost your shirt and you owe a
Yeah,
debt to somebody
yeah.
this turn.
I mean, that's a
I
different
think
event.
that
You can find
Booner,
treasure, right?
Yeah.
So that's a
yeah,
different
Yeah.
event.
But nothing happening half the time is boring.
Yeah,
And
yep,
either the bastions are important or they're not.
yep. And to wit, I would say to any GM using this and any player who's in a game that it is used, ask your GM to help you fill in those blanks.
yep,
Or if you're the GM, ask your players
Right.
yeah,
to collaboratively fill in those blanks.
yeah,
And that way, this will be more fun. If half the time they roll, I mean, most of us are gaming in a campaign once a month or once every other week. That's what, 12 sessions a year? Maybe 24 sessions a year. If
Yeah.
half of those times that nothing happens, you will forget this even exists
it exists
before
exactly.
you get
It's
to
not
your
going to
fourth
matter.
turn.
Yep.
Yeah.
So make sure something cool happens.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, if all is well, somebody could lose their spectacles. I mean, that's a very real thing that can happen according to the rules.
Jinkies.
Maybe they lose it in a closet or in a
Yeah.
hallway, or maybe they left them on a windowsill.
Or they
I mean,
find a closet they didn't know was there.
I mean, maybe they
Yep.
opened a window and poof, there my glasses left.
They
Yeah.
open a cupboard and there's some Scooby snacks in there, or the picture that has the eye
Yep.
cutouts and they're
Yep.
watching them.
Right.
Jankies. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
uh, All right, gentlemen. Last words on Bastions. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to kind of play with it, but I also think too that I'm glad that I am who I am as a DM and not trying to go ahead and run this as somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. So, for lack of a better phrase, like that's
I'm
So,
very glad it's here. I cannot wait for the much better DM's Guild version. There's probably one already about to come out.
yep.
Yeah, I can tell you that I am excited about this because this is good bones that has a base structure that now all my players will be able to know about, and then I have the opportunity to homebrew it to make it sing and make the alterations for each type of campaign I run.
Yep.
And I love that about this. And if anything can be said about the DMG is it's a list of tools that we can use to make our games better. This actually hits that mark. It just needs a little bit more work than some of the other tools we've reviewed.
Yep.
But that doesn't make it bad. It just means we've got a little elbow grease to put into it. I
Yep.
will also say that looking at the upcoming 2025 schedule, which is not official at this point,
Yep.
they are specifically talking about Bastions for the Eberron Forge of the Artificer book, which is supposed to be out summer of 2025. Keith Baker's consulting on that one from what I hear. But in addition to some other cool things, they're going to have some Eberron specific Bastion options. So I think what I'm hearing now and what I was always sensing is if you're wondering how to take anything or make a campaign world a little more flavorful and unique to your world, once we see how they do it in Eberron, if this is the base, we see how they do it in Eberron, we're going to have two really specific dials, steampunk to straightforward fantasy. And then sometime after that, we've got Greyhawk coming up, which is just a starter set. So I don't expect to see a lot of that there. But late in the year, we have a Forgotten Realms book. And while
Well, two
Bastions was
Forgotten Realms books according
specifically
to the schedule.
yeah, one player side and one campaign guide.
Yeah.
So I don't know which one it'll end up in, but I imagine one of those two books will probably add one or two Bastion facilities. And the beauty is the Bastion turns. If we don't like those tables now, WotC can fix that with each successive time they print a Bastion. They can simply add a different set of Bastion turn options, and voila,
Use this
we've got a
table
better
instead, or mix and match to your heart's desire.
Exactly. Hell,
So
roll on both, and then you and the player
choose your
decide
favorite.
which is better.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think ultimately what we've come down to is the Bastion in this book is you basic.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. That's
like are you talking
I
about it
missed you,
has
Michael.
like a poofy vest,
Yeah.
Yep.
UGG boots,
for furry Uggs, little
and a
booty
pumpkin
shorts.
spice
You're
latte
basic.
kind of
You
basic?
basic.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
basic.
You're basic.
Got it.
Basic. Yep.
With that visual, so,
I literally just came up with a host of NPCs for the next episode. Michael, you are killing it tonight.
Yeah, I know.
Killing it. I'm
Yeah.
so excited.
Salty Michael. Who would have known?
Yeah. We need
Well,
more. We need more Salty Michael.
Well, with that, so closes the cover on the DMG and our coverage thereof. I am glad that I bought the book. There's some very interesting stuff in it. I am excited to go ahead and see the next 25 books in this series to go ahead and see how these rules change.
Yep.
I think that's kind of like my dime store tour about what I feel about this book. So,
I mean, still love D&D. I still think
Yeah.
5th edition D&D is the best version of D&D.
Yep.
The book seems like sales seems to be doing very well for
Yep.
Wizards of the Coast. Again, I know half the people think they're a giant evil corporation, and they are, but
Yeah.
they make a game I love, damn it. So there's going to be a
Yep.
lot of people who get this book who start running games for the first time, and that, outside of all the other considerations, makes me very happy. And I think this is a good starting spot, but this is by no means the ending spot for those DMs.
Yeah.
I will say, Michael, if you think that Wizards of the Coast is a big evil corporation, you need to read the book Slaying the Dragon, which is all about the demise of TSR.
I've read some of that. And
it's really good.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, it's
wild.
really good.
I chose not to because,
because you're
flamingos
old.
aren't the only things that can put their head in the sand.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
Because you're old and you were there when those magics were written.
Exactly.
I get it.
So
Yeah,
do not
that's-
quote the old magics to me, which
Yeah. I mean, you were running a
Um,
comic book store in the height of it. So when
Yeah.
the comic modules and all that, yeah.
Look, I can tell you this. I love this game. We said it years ago. It used to be part of our intro. D&D is always our home. We always come back to it. That is not a dig on any other system, and
Sure.
it is not me trying to prop up a multi-billion-dollar corporation who does not need me as an individual, but it is me saying there's magic here, and something Glenn used to say all the time: the game is ours. We've been playing it for so long. It's our game. They are printing rules that we can choose to use and choose to incorporate and can enhance our fun. And we jettison the stuff that doesn't. And but the game is ours. And I love this game. And I think there's more things in this book that clarify will make it easier for more people to find the love of this game. Even if 2 years in, 3 campaigns in, they're jettisoning some of these things. The book will have done its job, and it will go down in history as a great book if it brought more people to the table.
Yep.
They're throwing dice. They're at the table. Everybody's having fun. That's what it's all about, and I'm here for it.
Yep.
Same.
All right, everybody. That's our show for tonight. Really excited. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Hope you enjoyed all these episodes about the DMG. We would love to go ahead and hear your comments. If you haven't checked them all out, please listen back through the playlist. They're all fairly short, 20, 30 minutes, given that take. So we'd really like to go ahead and hear your take on our take and see what you like, see what you didn't like. We want to hear what you thought about the DMG. And like always, we're pushing out a bunch of new content all the time, different things coming out all the time. So please make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button so that you get notified when we go live. There's a bunch more live stuff coming up here. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We would love to go ahead and see you with our next episode.
Absolutely. And if you haven't
Definitely.
voted yet on our draft, because it's still kind of floating around, we haven't had many people vote. So one or two people could sway who wins.
Yeah.
So go check that one
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And I will say, make comments about things you would like any of us to detail how we intend to homebrew or what something we've talked about looks like in our game. This show is a great time to touch base on what we do and how we do it in general. But some of those detailed conversations happen in the Dr. Homebrew vlog, happen in the On the Right Path vlog, and definitely happen on the Tabletop Cafe when we do those episodes, talk about these things. So this is a great space to say, hey, Michael, I loved what you were talking about there. Give me some details. How are you doing it? And then Michael can put that into a show so we can get to that info.
Absolutely. And so just to go ahead and give you all a heads up too, next week on the show, because this episode comes out February 7th, so February 14th is going to be our next Class Warfare that comes out here. We've got our Ranger episode coming up. I'm very excited for that one. It'll be a good time. I get to play the Beastmaster. I'm very excited. I'm not sure if you guys saw the shtick on the Ranger that I rolled up here. But he's a Goliath Ranger. He has his pet is a gigantic bear. His name is Asley Grisms. A big beard. It'll be a good time. Pacifist by nature.
Gentle. Some might say gentle.
Yeah, so gentle,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, gentle. He goes by Ben when people can't pronounce his real name. So it's
Yeah, you are aware that uncle that was in the previous conversation we had, he actually knows your Goliath and
Nice.
is frequently on that particular in that campaign as
Fantastic.
a bit of a sidekick.
Fantastic. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So
And if you've got a little gray in your beard, you might know exactly what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah,
If you don't, ask in the comments. If you do, don't give away the secret, but give us a thumbs up in the comments so we know how many of us are in the know.
So anyway, that is our show for tonight. Thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back next week with friend of the show Sergio from the D&D Lorecast and friend of the show Mike Daniel from 19 Hits the Dragon coming back to go ahead and run with Rangers with us. So it'll be a good time. We'll see you all then. Until then, like I said, like, subscribe, notify, whole 9 yards. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Later.
Good night, all.